And John Bett from KTD had actually tabled a case indicating that the international market has been extremely unfavorable in terms of pricing. But then my question, John, was in terms, the key point of concern here is in terms of the average return to farmers. If you look at the payout, based on the latest numbers that KTD has in the annual report, it's about 73%, in 2018 that is. That has been on decline. From 2016 it was 75%, in 2017 it was 76%. So perhaps the concern here is the ratio of payouts to farmers, and I think that's a very valid point, don't you think so?
Yeah, of course, looking at it from that perspective, one would, at the face of it, think that way. But the dynamics in the market have been different. The returns or the performance of the business has been different. At times you find this allegation that this is the lowest we have had in a long time. That's not true. In 2013-2014, a time when we had a similar scenario, we had actually a lower performance of the market with a return to the farmer of about 63%. If you go back to 2008-2009, again, we had a similar scenario. And that's the first time we heard of the El Nino phenomenon. So these are cyclic issues. After 2014, the market peaked, and in 2015-2016, we actually had a payout of 75% to the farmer, which is still a very good return to the farmer, given that on average the farm-owned costs are about 16%. So you can see the gap in terms of the farm-owned costs and the return really leaves the farmer with a bit of good margin. These are normal performance within the market. We are sure that it will turn around again, and we'll be back to the, because our target is actually 75% return to the farmer.
I do know that every point that you've mentioned, 2008, for example, 2014, this is a period in which we had a commodity price slump in the global market. So perhaps someone would argue right now the market has picked up and still farmers see depressed earnings. So that would be a bit tricky. But let me come to Edward Modibo here just to give us a sense in terms of the global market. Here's tabled a case which I think has been mirrored across the board. Why is it particularly in Kenya where farmers seem to be feeling the pinch?
Actually, contrary to the norm, all the key producing countries are also having challenges, and the key ones being Sri Lanka and India. They've even gone to the extent of coming up with various austerity measures just to signify that the price decline has affected farmers also in those countries. When we look at the global trends, we'll be looking at a production of about 5.6 billion and a consumption of about 5.4. So we have a surplus of about 200 million. That in itself means that we are really chasing for more consumers of tea, contrary with the production. So the key framework currently is we have more, the consumption is much lesser than the production, and that drives down prices. So those are the realities we have to face. Again, when we look at the prices, it's cyclical. Every 5 years we get this kind of trend. 2014, now we are in 2019. Possibly in 2024 we'll again be back here. So we have to be abreast with the changes. Trends have shown that every 5 years we have this kind of cycle. So we really need to be preparing. What do we need to do to avert or to militate or to reduce the reaction? Because in a market scenario, forces of supply and demand will dictate. Even in the auction platform, we have the prices month by month, week by week prices. Compared with the previous year, compared even up to 5 years, 10 years, I can provide that data. It shows for this particular year, from January to date, we've had relatively lower prices compared to the previous 3, 4, 5 years. So it is something we really need to not to bury our heads on or bury our heads in sand. It's the reality. In not all commodities, this kind of scenario plays out.
But before I get to the regulator, and just to be fair here, I actually accept, based on the data that I have here, if you look at the period between July 2018 and June 2019, the average price in the 3 main auctions, that was $2.64 per kilogram. At the same period a year earlier, it was $3.10. So clearly you can see the price decline. But some would argue, and John Bett brought this point, that over 70% of Kenya's tea goes to 5 markets. Don't you think this is a failure of market diversification by agencies? I'd imagine IATA and KTDA coming into this place. Don't you think it's your job to help diversify in terms of the market and spread the risk?
Indeed, that is one of the components we have to look at. But that has been a traditional trend whereby 5 markets hold about 78% of the consumption or the market share. But that in itself is skewed. Of course, it's to our disadvantage. But it's something which we are alive to, and we are looking at how best can we improve on the trends of market diversification.
Okay.
But would you go for the original, the assured market, or seek for what is not yet there? First of all, you hold on to what you have. Pakistan, Egypt, UK, United Arab Emirates and Sudan, those have been key. They have been dominant. They've continued to be patriotic to our teas. Not to say other countries are not consumers. We have got also countries which are patriotic to Sri Lanka. There are countries which are patriotic to India. Those are the key producing countries. But it's indeed a key area that as a country and as an African region we need to be looking at. Can we diversify the markets? It's not to say that we are not doing that. I'm sure Mr. John Bett will even be specific on the other markets that we're reaching out. And
actually, before I get to him, let me get Anthony Murithi's initial thoughts around this. Farmers would argue that they feel extremely abandoned, especially on this subject of what is the regulator's standpoint as far as protection of their interests is concerned when it comes to this issue of tea payments. What would you say to that?
Thank you very much and good morning. Allow me also to take this opportunity to say a good morning to our farmers, tea farmers, the tea value chain players, and also the other crops that we do regulate. I would say what we are talking about is a global situation. As we are the custodians of data. We also do market information, market intelligence, and also matters of market access. We also license several players in the value chain just to make sure that we are conforming. Remember, tea is food. What we are doing now as a regulator, you know, we had the tea task report that was done several years ago, and there are purpose and multi-agency recommendations that are therein that are being addressed through this approach. One of the issues is to see how we address the returns to the farmers. Of course, Kenya has very good quality teas, but coming back to the global situation, last year, 2018, we hit the 6 billion mark of the tea produced in the whole world. And this was an increase of around 4.25%. Kenya being a major tea producer, we had 22% share in the world market. And why we deviate now from the other markets is that Kenya is basically an exporter. And being an exporter, sometimes you are price takers. China does 46%. India also does quite a lot. But the deviations is they also take a lot of their tea. And that's where we come from. That we also need to promote our people to take more tea. Okay, we do the costings of the several production costs, both at the farmers level, matters of inspections of agronomic practices, good manufacturing practices, so that the farmer gets the due that are to him. And as a regulator, we have even gone further. We even now have farmers and industry players coming around so that they can also be able to compete and compare results. Come this Friday, we are having our national stakeholder forum, and it will come out the best produced tea, the best farmer, the best packer, and this one actually catches the eye of the trader, so that they're also able to sell to them and they're also able to get premiums. So the issue of quality is quite key. Because Kenya tea is premised on quality, and the better quality that we produce, the better. But we also working on strategies as a regulator. We are talking of product diversification, very working closely with Tea Research Institute, where we can be able to get tea in various forms, the orthodox teas, infusions, all these types of teas. We're also talking about branding. As we talk, we have a Kenyan mark of origin for tea, so that Kenya does not lose that traceability, so that people can know this is Kenyan tea, and we are actually premising it on quality. We are also working with other agencies to promote. We are talking of emerging markets. It has come out. The traditional markets, Pakistan does at 7% imports from Kenya, which is a big chunk. But we're also having a presence in emerging markets. As we speak, we have a strategy with Russia, where now we are working to penetrate that market. Very good resource. We are working with Jordan, we are working with Kazakhstan, also the traditional markets in Europe, and also now the specialty teas, which are based on health. So basically, the better tea we produce, the better the returns that we get. But also there's that global scenario that we are also privy to.
As a regulator, you rightly mentioned that it is your business to license players in the value chain. Then there's a lot of talk about cartels, if I could call them, and brokers, and I mean, you know, people who shouldn't be playing in this value chain. What's the situation on that front?
Thank you. I would say we do license various players along the value chain. We do license producers, that's the processors. Of course, there are processes. Before we license you, we do diligence. Of course, you must satisfy us that you have the volumes. You must also satisfy us that you have the farmers with you. You must also certify us that you're also now going to the good manufacturing practices so that we don't lose it. We also license the traders we are with here. The IATA, we have several of the packers. Of course, there are standards for each. We are the custodians of standards and quality. And in this, you work very closely with other agencies. We work with the Kenya Bureau of Standards. We work with KEFIS on matters of the nurseries. We also work with other agencies because of the outbreak points at the Mombasa, the KPA, and the like. So basically, and in T, I would say, we have what we call a code of practice that now binds the T stakeholders together. And like my colleague would also say, they have that rule book where everyone now has to prescribe. And of course, the traders that do the trading, of course, they are the people licensed after the process is done, and this is an annual process. And to now reaffirm that, we do quarterly visits, both to the traders and the producers. Of course, just to check on the parameters, that we are actually doing it well and be able to conform to the standards. Of course, when necessary, we also enforce.
So in short, what you're saying is that we don't have infiltration by cartels or this, if I could say, illicit brokers in the value chain?
None that I know of.
Okay.
Because whoever is there is licensed, and whoever gets to the floor of the auction, or whoever trades or packs, is actually done by us.
All right. John, but allow me to swing back to you. And the High Court ruled 2 days ago that the Auditor General should ideally be doing an independent audit of the KTDA books of accounts. What's your position on this matter as KTDA?
Yes, we heard about it, about that ruling, and I think what I would say as KTDA is that we are a limited liability company, and as per the company law, there are requirements which we have been complying with, that we are audited at least once a year, and we have that external auditor. Internally also we have our auditors. So I think we'll wait to see the details of the ruling, then we should be able to give an appropriate response on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as of now, I mean, is it something you're open to? Is it something you're against?
We are an open book, and right from the factory all the way to our subsidiaries. We are an open company. We file our returns. So really, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in case of anything, then they're welcome.
Okay. I was reading through the financial report of 2018, which is the latest I could access, and which is audited by PwC.
Yes.
And one of the indicators is that there's what I could trace, there's a huge surge, if I could call it, in operational costs. And perhaps this is playing out in depressing the returns to farmers, because if you have revenues this much and then operational costs are rising this much, do you see that as a key challenge facing KTDA?
Of course, costs have been rising year on year. And that informs why we are even going right now into power generation. Because 2 of our biggest cost drivers is labor and energy.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of labor, at least we have done a lot of automation right from the field. Our leaf collection right now is we have gadgets that are able to capture data and transmit to the factory. Previously, you would have leaf collection clerks in all the buying centers, and we have so many buying centers. These days, we are adopting what you call the logistic assistance. Somebody will be able to drive that car and collect a leaf and capture that leaf. And so at that point, they'll be able to try and manage that cost. Previously, we used to have so many lorries. I think it was almost 1,500 plus. These days, we have less, more efficient lorries to try and bring down that cost. When you come to the factory, previously we'd have almost 400 going to 500 staff. But due to cost of automation, continuous withering units, continuous fermentation units, and all other things within the factory, we've been able to cut down that number. So labor has been a very big issue, and you see you're not in control of the rate so much because it's a negotiated issue. Of course, the workers' union is there, so you negotiate, and whatever rate that is determined, that's what you apply. So that has at least assist us in that component. Automation has been very key to us, and we always look forward to other innovations that can assist us to bring down that cost. In terms of energy, which is another very big component, the cost of power, we are takers, and there's been a very big, almost 30% is the energy component when you break down the cost structure. So that's why we are now investing in power generating units to try and bring down that cost element. And also factories are investing in wood lots to also try and generate, because we use two forms of power. Yeah. The heat, the thermal, which is you burn fuel to generate heat so that you can get steam, and also the electricity. So both we have programs to try and address those cost drivers and bring down that cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. And Modibo, just coming to you, given the kind of volume that Kenya puts out in terms of the global tea market, many of us would anticipate that Kenya would essentially be in the category of price makers when it comes to the price of tea in the global market. It seems to be the reverse. And we're curious to know, why is this the case? Because now this finally has a pinch on the farmer, because if we're being swayed by the global forces as it is being painted here, then we leave our farmers quite vulnerable. Why is Kenya, given the kind of capacity it has, why are we so vulnerable?
Thank you very much for that. One thing is we have to also look at what happens in the other tea producing countries. If it's for Sri Lanka, about 40% of their teas are in value added form. In our context, it will be 5%. If we go to India, produces 1.2 billion kilograms of tea. They consume 1 billion and only export 200 million. You can see the dynamics are different. In fact, for them, they set aside that 200 we must export. The rest we have to consume. What about the Kenyan context? What about the African context? Here we're exporting 95-96%, consuming 4%. So we really have to also to look at what is the strategy of those other tea producing countries. They've delved into more also of their own local consumption. We have the best quality teas, but our average consumption is about 500 grams per Kenyan. That in itself is low by all standards. Okay. Look at other countries like Ireland, Turkey. You'll be looking about 2 kilograms per person. So that in itself, charity begins at home. Can we start by consuming much of our teas? And that in itself, the dynamics will be there. Prices will likely, there'll be much of it consumed, there'll be less available relatively, and that in itself is a driver to relatively good prices.
But don't you think it is fair to say that when you talk about the value addition, the farmer submits the green leaf, and now it comes to processors and agencies like KTDA for the value added aspect. Yes. So this is not a blame we can heap on the farmer, because the farmer only produces tea. Yeah. So what role are you guys playing in terms of this value add?
Maybe, okay.
Yeah, I think the model of KTDA is quite unique, and that's why it's recognized, and we have a number of institutions that try to benchmark and and emulate. We have a situation where the farmer is the investor in one front, also because the farmer is the one that invests in the factory. The farmer is the one that invests and owns the tea right to the selling point at the auction. The element of value addition, which would really try and retain as much value within the country. It may not necessarily go back to the farmer, but it looks within the country, because they'll be able to create employment and generate a lot of tax and all that stuff. Is driven by factors outside the farmer, and that is why a number of reports have been done, and the TD is here to the extent of recommending for consumer, a common user facility, for example, to try and lock in a number of entrepreneurs to value add within the country.
But just allow me to cut you short there respectfully, if you addition and the competitiveness of Kenya Tea and how farmers can get better proceeds. Please speak up.
Thank you very much. I wanted to take you through the value addition process. At times it's construed to mean the retail end of value addition, but there are a number of steps in the value chain where value addition goes on. The first level of value addition is processing at the factory.
Yes.
Because we are not selling green leaf, we are selling ready-made tea.
Yes.
Ready to drink at that point. It's only that it's not packaged for retail. That is the first level of value addition. The second level of value addition is blending, where teas from different origins are brought, are mixed and blended to create a taste that is specific to a particular market segment.
Yes.
And that happens in Mombasa. And that's where we also have a very big opportunity as a country, because we have teas from 10 countries coming to Mombasa. The only bit is that it's coming in bulk and leaving in bulk.
Yeah.
So, but as from the small-scale sector perspective, that's why we have a subsidiary unit called Chai Trading that does that part of value addition, and the returns that it generates blows back to the farmer. The fourth level of value addition is now the retail space, where packers buy teas in bulk, either in raw, in an unblended form or blends, and brand. And that's where we now have Ketepa. So and that's why we are saying that space requires a bit of investment and support, because we have the requisite environment availed by let's say the government, for example,
yes,
in terms of the tax environment and infrastructure. There's a report that had been done to try and create that environment so that we can have more players creating more value, so that a lot of value is retained within the country and for the benefit of everyone.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just curious to know, because this is a question which has been flying around ever since we began covering these matters around KTDA. When you give the farmer 41 shillings and 30 cents per kilogram, what is the price fetching in the global market?
The global market, there are different levels. Again, is it at the bulk level or retail level?
Okay.
If it's at the bulk level, our export price right now on average is, for the last financial year, was $2.59. The tea is sold in dollars.
Yes, sure.
Because it's largely export.
So it's about 260 shillings.
About 260 shillings.
Yes.
This is the price of made tea. It takes about 4.5 kilos of made tea, of green leaf to make 1 kilo of made tea. So you divide that to about almost 260 shillings by 4.5. That gives you about 50 shillings or 60 shillings thereabout.
Correct.
Yeah. So you see, really, the return to the farmer is equally satisfactory from that computation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Modibo, just to get your thoughts around the aspect of value addition, and one of the key challenges we're facing right now is the reports around Rwanda tea is becoming a lot more favorable, at least in terms of perception, when compared to Kenya tea, and this definitely now trickles down to the farmer, because the moment you don't fetch the market you used to fetch in the past, then definitely your proceeds are undermined. Why is this the case?
In the case of Rwanda, which is also a significant member of the EATTA, the factories under Rwanda, one thing is we have also to look at the historical perspective. Initially, it used to be government run. Most of the tea factories were run under the government, but the government worked out modalities of privatization. So the tea factories are in the private sector, are being run by the farmers and the investors. So one aspect is that they moved, with that change of guard, they moved towards ensuring quality is maintained. Of course, they have other natural factors, the topography, the soils, and then the bushes are not old. Significantly, when we compare, Rwanda just started, teas have just become the norm, more recent years than when compared with Kenya. So there are a number of factors which have been at play. Then we also know that Kenya contributed quite a lot in supporting the Rwandan tea sector. in terms of management services initially to prompt up and ensure that good husbandry and also processing of teas is done. That's the key in terms of Rwanda. So in terms of their average prices standing out to be what it is currently is not a surprise. It's just that they've maintained standards in terms of their teas.
So would you say it's a case of student beat teacher, whereby we have the best practice and we transmit it to this country, but then we don't abide by the same?
Well, we also need to look at the quantum we're handling here. Rwanda, you'd be looking about 20 to 30 million kilograms of tea per annum, which could be a factory. In Kenya, we're looking at about 493 million kilos last year. Yeah. So by all standards, when you look at it, it's easier to manage that and still stick to those smaller units and do it well in relative terms. Okay. The reason some of the teas in Rwandan teas were fetching as much as $6 at the auction 2 weeks back, and that has been the trend for the past 1 month. Just shows quality also drives good prices. Not to say that we don't have good quality. Ours is good quality also, but when you look at, we're looking at 69 KTDA tea factories. We're looking at other independent tea factories. So in all, we have got a bigger stake. We have got bigger key players who have to be looked at as compared to the other countries. Okay. But we do appreciate that quality is a factor we have to look at. Even Burundi equally. Average prices are as good. After Rwanda, we have Kenya, then Burundi. So it follows up. Okay. And Mr. Murithi, in 2014 we had this tea sector task force which tabled a report and had a number of recommendations which ideally should have helped in shoring up the welfare of the farmers on the grassroots. How are we in terms of being engaged as a regulator in the implementation of these recommendations?
Thank you very much. Indeed, yes, the task force report was done, and pursuant to that, the Ministry of Agriculture under stewardship, we formed an interagency committee, now bringing the different stakeholders together, because we had 11 recommendations touching on various sectors of the value chain. And this being a dynamic process, the 11 recommendations are being addressed, but in a dynamic way. But I would rather talk about the milestones that have been done since then. Okay. One of the recommendations was the issue of emerging markets, which I think I've already talked about. We are already now engaging the emerging markets. As Tea Directorate, we have spearheaded studies and also engagement with now the new emerging markets, the Russia, the Kazakhstan. We are back in the EU, all these markets. And another issue was the issue of product diversification. And like we are seeing in the market today, I'm happy to report that we have teas, the orthodox teas. We have purple tea, that is a Kenyan bred variety. Most of the consumers are now getting more health conscious. We are not just targeting the local consumers, but also what the consumers need outside there. Apart from that, also recommendations of how we could be able to make the auction be e-compliant, and there's already commendable work in progress. I know they are going to pilot in the few next months, and this is happening. The issue of making transaction easier. Okay. We also spearheading that, working together with Kentrade.
Let me just hold you there, Murithi. I'm told we have our colleague Martin Mwaura on the ground in Muranga, just with some views from farmers, tea farmers for that matter. Let's just hear what they have to say. Martin.
Thank you so much, Julian. As you have rightly said, yes, this is 021, this is Muranga County. And Muranga County is among the 18 counties, there are 18 tea-producing counties. And recently, as you saw, the governor was in court, having gone there after farmers complaining of poor returns year after year. I just want to talk to some of the farmers here. I actually have two farmers, and one of them has been agitating for this for so long. He even came up with a tea bill. I just want to talk to him and so that he can tell us maybe his views. Welcome to NTV. I want you to start by introducing yourself and tell us what is happening at the tea sector.
Thank you. My name is Mwangi Kiregwe. I'm a tea farmer in Ikombe, IK 94032. And what we can say right now, KTDA is over investing. And this is hurting the farmer. They are not investing with the farmer. They are investing in developments that are not very core to the farmer. Like we are seeing them building, buying land, building houses in Nairobi. This is the time that they should now focus. They stop or they halt all those development for now, and they focus on the farmer now. Number two, I'm very happy that the governor of Murang'a went to court and he got orders, expert orders to audit, to have forensic audit KTDA, because from here is when you're the farmer, you realize out of those developments that they are doing there, how much is the cost? What is the cost to them? Is it realistic? Because if you look at some of the projects, like the hydropower and some of the building, you find that the cost is highly inflated. Now, another thing, in KTDA we lack an oversight body, a serious oversight body. Martin, if you look at banks, we have a Central Bank of Kenya which regulates limited companies, limited banks. These are limited companies. In Kenya, a farmer, KTDA is not regulated. Me as a farmer, I don't know where to rush to if I'm aggrieved by KTDA. I don't know whether to go to the chief, to go to police station. I don't know whether to scream. We need a regulator, a strong regulator. And he can be premised maybe as the Tea Directorate or even the County of Governor's Office. You see, that way, the office will be able to interrogate all the agreements that are there that they intend to affect the farmer before they are implemented, because that is where we got it wrong from the beginning.
I had come up with a bill, and you are proposing that we form a board that will oversee the marketing of the tea. And also, we had you are proposing that farmers be paid quarterly. Maybe you still hold the same view.
I still hold the same views, but as for now, this outcry is national, it's beyond Murang'a. The bill you are talking about was confined to our jurisdiction, that is Murang'a. It will be better if it is done at the national level. And I'm happy that the senators and the MPs have come up with that Tea Act. We need to have it include all the issues that the farmers have. I had also, the farmers also want to be paid quarterly, 3 months. You see, one thing with KTDA is that they sell our teas every week, and they get their money almost after 4 days. Why do they keep that money with themselves? Why should they not give the farmer? You see, they are keeping our money, and then they are telling the same farmers to come and borrow from their institution, that is Green and Feather, at an interest rate. In fact, a very high interest rate of 40–50%, which is exploitative. So, if they are paid quarterly, the farmers will earn the benefits of the dollar, the exchange rate, and any foreign currency exchange rate, or they'll be able to also to address their issues on the ground, like school fees and everything. You see, where tea is grown, food is not usually grown, because it's usually very cold, and you find that a crop like maize take about 1 year there in tea zone. So you find that these farmers eat, they depend on their pocket. Their families depend on their pocket. So it will be prudent if KTDA now, or the government, or the president for this matter, because if you touch that button, KTDA says that they are a limited company and they cannot, they don't want to be told how to do their business. The leadership, the president, can intervene and direct them to start paying farmers quarterly.
Thank you so much. Let me talk to another tea farmer. He's a young gentleman over here. Maybe what do you think is ailing the sector? And we have a task force. Do you think it is high time that the 2017 task force is implemented by the president?
Thank you, Martin. My name is Geduka Kahari from Kanyenyene Tea Factory catchment area. And there are issues, as my colleague has said, the issues that are bedeviling and ailing the tea sector. One of them being the issue of taxes. The tea sector is one of the heavily taxed sector with about 42 levies, and that is one of the areas that I believe the problem is. Because, for instance, we are told that the 1 kg of made tea will fetch around 200 and something or 300 and something shillings. But the amount of money that is getting to the farmer is about 16%. So, one thing I'm sure of is the taxes. If we calculate the amount or the cost attributed to 1 kg of made tea, you will realize those taxes will account for almost 80%. So it is until and unless we address that through the National Treasury, through the President. And in fact, it's something to applaud about the governor for going a step further having interest of tea farmers at heart. And therefore, I believe that is one thing. Secondly, there is an issue with the auction, whereby the brokers, the tea brokers, who collude with the organizers of tea auction to determine the prices. From the economics point of view, prices are determined by the forces of demand and supply. So I don't expect that prices are determined through collusion. Then another thing, Martin, in the recent past, I have had a petition in the Senate regarding tea farmers' health issues. And I remember I talked to several senators, I talked to several people regarding the issues of health, whereby there can be issues to do with how the issue can be addressed so that farmers, the ailments such as arthritis can be handled. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you so much. Okay. Julian, you have just heard, those are some of the few views that I've managed to grab from the tea farmers here in Murang'a. And yes, they're saying the sector has been ailing for so long, and it is high time the government intervenes before they do away with tea farming. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Those are very spot-on points from the farmers there, and we shall be responding to that with my panel here. But before that, getting to two farmers from Murang'a, and they've raised very key issues. And just to go straight in terms of response to those matters, I'd like to start with you, John Bett. KTDA, one of the farmers says, is making investments which don't trickle down to the farmer. You're building structures in Nairobi and that kind of a thing, and investing in power. Of course, earlier you mentioned the power is to cut on your costs. What would you respond to some of the issues raised there?
Thank you, and thanks for the comments by Mr. Kirigwi. I seem to know him. The investments along the value chain are really to lock up as much value as possible for the benefit of the farmer. These investments, just quoting last financial year's numbers, there was a dividend payout of over 600 million. In fact, I think it was 691 or something like that million. And paid out to the various the factories. And factories received different, on average, between 15 to 20 million per factory. So really, if we didn't have that investment or those investments, that money would not have come back to the farmer. So I think it just goes on to confirm that, yes, I think probably there's need for more sensitization for the farmers to know that these are their investments and they are making money out of those investments. Issues of the costs of these investments, I think what are the issues of hydropower? Inflated. The costs definitely is a concern to all the infrastructural investments, especially in Kenya, especially when it involves issues of land acquisition and all that stuff. But these are, within the industry discussions and levels. So saying inflated probably is relative to what? Because you have to compare that particular investment to another, so that you're able to say, yes, this one is highly inflated because of the industry is this level and this one is at this level. But I agree, where investments are touching on land issues, you have seen land issues, SGR and all this other stuff. They're always very tricky and very complicated, and at times they get to court. And so it's an area that we know, yes, it's a bit tricky. On matters pertaining to tax, I think that is, we have said, is also one of our challenges. The 5% of tea that we consume locally is taxed. There are various levies that are levied on the tea, on these services. So I think those are issues that are within the task force, and they are still being looked at. The issues of price, I think I'll leave that one to Mr. Mudigo.
Actually, I'd like to get to Muriithi right quick on that. A farmer there mentioned something which I mentioned earlier, the issue of brokers and collusion at the auction. It might be perceived because I'm not there. But how would you respond to that, farmer?
Thank you very much. The issue of collusion, I think what my take is, the auction is quite transparent. We have the traders sitting there, the brokers sitting there. We have officers sitting there. And of course, what now is being traded on a weekly basis is also benchmarked on the world scenario. So basically, if you look at their trends, that manipulation, I think you really need to be very smart to collude, especially on the floor, because you have gone to the floor and seen what happens. So I think I could say it's a perception. And back to the issue of the levies, the tea levy was abolished in 2015. Currently, what is being witnessed is maybe the multi-agency requirements. We have obligations in terms of various agencies, the single business permits, the environmental regulations, the transport, all these things. Those add up maybe to the 42. But as a regulator, we only do 7. We do license the traders, we license the warehousemen, we license the auction, we license the packers. They're actually 7 at a very minimal fee. And this is the money that is plowed back for those activities of actually monitoring conformity and also enforcement on quarterly basis and also as need arises. So basically the issue of the 42, this is multi-agencies, not us as Tea Directorate that's doing it.
And there's a farmer who mentioned that KTDA is operating without oversight, and I'd imagine that this falls directly under your remit as the industry regulator. Your thoughts around that?
I'll not say they are operating above board. KTDA is a producer, they're also marketing agents, and of course their requirements. The same conditions that we take to license an independent factory, for example, and there are many. The same way we do the multinationals, the same way you do the inspections for conformity to the good manufacturing practices. These ones cut across the board. So basically, I think KTDA, because of the bigger, they had 55% of the farmers who are majorly small scale. So basically, they have a big chunk, and I think that's why these issues could also arise. But basically, they are all treated the same. The regimes and the requirements, the vetting process, everyone goes through the same.
Okay. Mr. Modibo, let me come to you on the subject of the auctions and the perceived lack of transparency. It is very common, even in our capital markets, where we have what we call information asymmetry, whereby we're the large traders, so we seem to have a way of colluding, and we've seen insider trading happening, for example. And I'd imagine that farmers are decrying that sort of situation, whereby we have particular big players who decide they're going to cut deals on a particular front. How pervasive is this, I mean, from where you sit, and what can be done about it?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. First and foremost, I would like to remove the notion that there is any form of collusion. There isn't, and there's never been. And I will intimate this in different ways, just to confirm that. One is that the auction is live streamed every Monday and Tuesday. You can log in and see what is happening at the auction. So would a person who is colluding or having such kind of arrangements go public? A second aspect is, again, we have 85 buyers of tea in our register, those who are members of EATTA. We have, on the other hand, 87 producers who bring their teas to the auction from 10 countries. I don't think they'll be bringing their teas to a place which is notorious for such kind of arrangements.
But it's a huge auction. I mean, it is
a huge auction, and that's the more the reason. Those numbers in itself should tell you it's not feasible. You cannot have 85 buyers. Where will they be meeting to collude? Now, you look at the number of brokers we have, the tea marketing agents. Maybe that term broker is what gives the wrong notion.
The wrong impression.
Maybe the name should be called marketing agents for whatever purposes. But they do a noble job. They test the tea, they give a value to the tea, they also do market surveys, and are able to assign a good price for these same factories, not just KTDA factories, plantations and factories from all over the region. So in that in itself, we cannot also, the brokers earn a commission based on the higher the value.
Yeah.
So they, in a typical situation, they'll get 0.755% or whatever they've negotiated from the producer, 0.5% from the buyer. So there's no motivation to favor either side. They are neutral. Their motivation is the higher the price, the better for them to get something. So the question about collusion really is far-fetched. It's not there. Even the bigger players cannot. Where would they be meeting? You're not assured that when you leave buying the tea, your colleague will buy. These are 85 people competing, and those who are active on a weekly basis are more than 60. Where would you be meeting to collude? So it is far-fetched. This is a large auction. Actually, it is the largest tea auction in the world, and it's reputed. Every other key player worth managing tea looks at the Mombasa tea auction. So that aspect is really out of place. Other aspects we should be looking at and focusing on currently And with this kind of scenario we are caught up with currently is, one, we need to have a national tea policy, tea legislation like it was in 2012 and before, and we need to have clear tea regulations. As of now, we are national tea policy draft, because it's not operational. 2014, it passed its time, it's not being utilized. We need to engage and have a national tea policy, because tea is so key. We have so many other policies for lesser essential commodities, but we don't have for tea. We now have a legislation in Parliament, and this we want to appreciate. The parliamentarians should put in a lot of energies and focus on seeing that legislation is passed. And that in a way will resolve many of the myriad issues being raised. It's better that they debate and put much energy in Parliament to make us have a tea legislation that will be in place. Then we have the regulations, which as of now, the regulations have not yet been enforced. We don't have the legislations passed by the Cabinet Secretary. Once they are assigned, then they'll be part and parcel of legislation. So all these mamas and what we're having, really, it's unfortunate, but the realities are we need to have a proper framework. But we don't need to have the framework. There was a mention about Murang'a tea bill. I will not go that route.
Sure.
We don't need to over-regulate. Once we have the tea policy, the tea legislation and tea regulations, we'll be good to go.
Mr. Modibo, let me hold you there, and we cross over to some tea farmers in Kisii. Janet Nyamwamo, my colleague, is on that side. Janet, what are the farmers saying about the matters around the tea sector there?
Well, I'm here in Kisii County at Nyanguru, and this place is a few kilometers from one of the factories that received the least bonuses this year. And the farmers here are wondering what happened. I'm here with a few farmers who are going to tell us what's their take about that. Jina lako ni nani?
Jina langu ni Stanley Minda.
Ni mkulima
katika Nyamwamo factory. Sasa sisi tunasumbuka hapa kwa sababu tunalima. Kwanza kabisa mimi nilikuwa agriculture officer. Tangu nilifanya mpaka miaka 30, tangu tuchenge Nyankopa huko. Hii mambo hakukuwa hapa naonekana kama hii tunaona siku hizi. Na sasa inaturasimisha sisi kuuliza kwa nini Nyeri inafanyiwa juu na hapa Kisii tunafanyiwa shilingi 11. Tunashindwa kuchua ni kwa nini? Kwa sababu chai ni moja, tena mimi vile nilikuwa agriculture officer tulikuwa tunapanda hiyo chai kiloni ni moja, lakini sasa hii 11 tunaambiwa na 11 atuchui kama hii kazi iko namna gani. Sasa mimi niko na eka 3 ya chai, na hii ndio silibu yangu. Kama ikiwezekana wewe utaona ni mimi kati ya shilingi kilo 10,000 na 15. Lakini ninasumbuka na miaka yangu ni mingi. Sasa mimi ni mzee. Sasa inaonekana namna gani? Kwangu inanipiti nitoe chai nipande miti, kwa sababu plot mimi iko naye ni kupwa kuliko wengine. Sasa mimi siwezi fanyia hasara, kwa sababu na hii pesa zetu inaonekana na kuliwa kwa factory, kwa sababu estimate yao iko juu kuliko sisi. Tukienda kwa samba sisi tunalipa kuchuna, tunalipa kuchuna, hakuna kitu kinabaki kwa ile pesa tunapata kwa mwezi. Lakini na hii bonus ndio tunangoja, sasa ndio tunapewa hela kama hii. Ni aibu sana. Sasa wanawake hapa ndio wanachuna chai, tunalipa wao, hata wao hapa wanalia, hapa wanazunguka hapa kulia. Tunaona ni mbaya sana. Asante.
Asante sana mzee. As I was coming today morning, the farmers were smartly dressed and they said they don't want to go to their farms because they are tired and they are wondering why the bonus is so low. I'm here with one mama who is also a tea farmer, and she's going to tell us about their predicament.
My name is as follows. I'm Alice Kwambuka Mainya. Majina yangu ni kama inafuata hivi. Mimi ni Alice Kwambuka Mainya, ni mkulima wa Nyamwamo factory anda Nyamwamo factory. Mimi niko na huzuni mwingi kwa kupata hii mambo ya chai inaanza kusumbua sisi. Tunafanya kazi mingi kwa kujuna, tunapeana kazi mingi, pesa mingi kwa wachunaji. Sasa hatuoni vile inatuendeza, wanatufanyia sisi jini kwa maripo. Kama hii ya bonus tunatarajia itaweza inua sisi kwa kupata na kufanyia hiki na kile ili tuinuke juu. Sasa tunaendelea kurudi chini kwa ajili ya hiyo mambo. Kwa hivyo mimi nalia na ninapiga nduru. Serikali ingia ndani, msaidie sisi. Sisi kama wamama tunahangaika, sisi ndio tunaendanga ndani ya chai kila wakati. Tunahangaika kwa buying centers, tunakaa hapo hata tunalala siku 2 siku 3 bila kuchukuliwa chai yetu. Sasa ni nini tunafanya? Tunashindwa, hatuna lenye tunatoka na tunaenda.
Asante mama. Now the farmers here are wondering, and they were asking me to ask the government if there is another quality plant that is planted elsewhere for the tea plant, so that they can be given that plant to plant in this area, so that they can get whatever the bonus can rise from this region. I'm Janet Nyamwamu.
Right, and that was my colleague Janet Nyamwamu in Kisii speaking to tea farmers, and many thanks. And quite an emotive appeal there from the lady, especially regarding tea. 2 issues here, if I could get to you, John Bett. One, there was a proposal that tea farmers be paid quarterly from an earlier farmer. The second one, what's the way forward with this sector? Because as you've heard, some are abandoning tea to plant trees. And for Kenya, that has a very serious foreign exchange earnings implications. Please.
Thank you very much. On the issues of payment modalities, these are issues that are discussed and advanced by the various factory boards. I know right now there is there's an ongoing, discussion on these matters. Remember, previously we never used to have the what you call initial bonus. In around April, and that came to pass. So these are decisions that are made, and once they are made by the various factory board, because these are factories that operate independent of each other. KTDA is just a managing agent. So and then once that decision is made, then it will be implemented. There are ongoing discussions, and probably let's wait and see how that will pan out. But it's true. We have gotten the comments and the sentiments, and they'll inform the decision that is being held by the various factory boards. On the issue of performance from that region, it's true. Yes, that factory paid a low bonus. I think the second lowest. The lowest was in Kapsara region, followed by that. And I think within the conversation, within what the lady has said, there lies the reason. That region has a high prevalence of Mangirito, competition for greenleaf. So that has a very big impact on terms of quality.
Yeah.
The quality of greenleaf delivered determines the quality of output. And this, you have had a number of buyers who are there in the auction, and each buyer buys tea based on what the individual consumer wants to have on their cup, because money actually is made on the cup. What the consumers want is what is demanded. So it's just a pullback, you know, on that. So 2 issues. That region is issues of Mangirito, Mangirito, and then there's something that she has said that, of course, we'll take it up and find out exactly. If it's true, the issues of they are staying in the buying center for 2 to 3 days. That is a very serious issue, because one, tea needs to be processed and delivered to the factory, rather plucked and delivered to the factory within 8 hours, so that you can make good quality tea. It stays in the field. The lower the quality, because it's generating its own heat, and it's a dying process. So you have to manage that. So if it's true that tea stays in the buying centers for that long, then we'll take it up with our regional management to find out exactly why and what action needs to be taken.
John, but let me hold you there. We have only 2 minutes to wind up, and let me get your closing remarks, gentlemen, unfortunately, starting with Anthony Mureithi.
Thank you very much. I think from the clip from Kisii, I picked 2 issues: the issue of productivity and the issue of returns. I think one of the recommendations of the task force was to address matters of productivity, because we are now faced with the issues of building large sizes and also an aging population. I think in consultation and together with TRI, there are many better new clones that are coming up. and also now what I talked about, diversification, so that the farmers can be able to get more returns. And I think I'll also urge Kenyans to take more tea. Charity starts at home. The science shows that we should be taking a cup of tea every 2 hours. In Kenya, we take morning, lunchtime, evening. And of course, we take with a lot of sugar, a lot of milk. Tea becomes quite expensive. And I think we have that education exercise so that people can take tea in the right way and also take more of it.
All right. Bwana Mudibo, your closing remarks?
My closing remarks are one, we need to appreciate the important role played by the Kenya Tea Development Agency. Indeed, this matter of as we empathize with the farmers, we also need to appreciate that we have a model that is being looked at world over as a success story. So, and when we look at tea, it's one of the only commodities that is consistent in 21 counties, serving a lot of millions of Kenyans. We've seen what has happened with cotton, pyrethrum, sisal, you name it. So let's not kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Let's appreciate the important role done by the board and management on KTDA. Of course, there's room for improvement, which can still be looked at. Okay. On the auction, let's appreciate we have the largest tea auction in the world, and as transparent, where the taxes are not levied at the auction, where payments are done within 9 days.
Okay.
And there's everything to exemplify and be proud of as Kenyans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. That has been our discussion on the tea sector and the woes bedeviling farmers and the earnings they're getting in the global market. So what's the way forward? Those are some of the closing remarks from my panel. Thank you very much, Edward Mudibo. Thank you very much, Anthony Mureithi, and John Bett, rather. Sorry for that. And up next is NTV Sasa, and the discussion is focusing on breast cancer, and that explains Mai Tai. So Jen Goiri and Salim Swale will be up next. Thank you.